Start over, and if Wes will put his phone away. Some friction discs are still on both sides and have no friction material. Now, does anybody have your book handy? Because I want to know why the answer key says that one is true. You ever seen a friction disc that had nothing on either side? I mean, it was just steel on both sides. Somebody grab your book. Where's the book? Grab your book. That's going to be volume 2, I believe. Grab your book and somebody dig for that. Dig into that chapter and tell me what you see there. That's volume 2, right? Is that volume 1 or volume 2?
Would it be like a non-friction disc though? That didn't have friction? That makes no sense.
Yep. What I mean is, somebody needs to dig in. You guys need to do a little bit of reading, you know, instead of just listening to me talk. Do a little bit of reading on this thing. And let's find out what the sound mill are talking about. Because there's really no excuse for us not knowing the answer to this kind of thing. So that question was, some friction discs are steel on both sides and have no friction material. I want you to have some knowledge of that. We're going to look at some transmission parts pretty quick, ain't we, Archie?
Yeah.
You got some transmission parts in your hand here when you get that out of the truck.
Oh, it won't take that long to get it out.
No, not hardly. Bushing is a type of bearing. Is it? Is a bushing a type of bearing?
That's false.
Huh?
That's false.
Now, what is a bearing anyway?
I know what one is.
A bushing is a type of bearing. True or
Makes
false?
things easier to turn.
Now wait a minute. What about your rod bearings, your main bearings, your cam bearings? Isn't a bushing an automatic transmission like a cam bearing in an engine?
Sure.
Then a bushing is a kind of bearing. All right, dig into that chapter that we're in right here. Dig into that chapter. All right, the question you're looking, I want to look at where it talks about friction discs, and see anywhere about it saying they're talking about them steel on both sides and have no friction material. If I was just going to wing it through that question, I'd probably say that, well, friction discs are going to have friction material on them. And I want to, I'm digging. I want to know where they're coming from with that. The clutch is operated by mechanical pressure. Mechanical pressure meaning a lever or some, balls rolling in dimples or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Is that true or false? Or is a clutch, the clutches on automatic transmission applied by mechanical pressure, or is that true or that false? What do they apply by? Hydraulic pressure. So down at the bottom of that drum, down at the bottom of that clutch drum, and look at there, we still got yesterday's drawing up there. Down at the bottom of that clutch drum, you got a piston. And a piston don't move very far because it doesn't have to. And that piston is set up so that it can actually push on plates. In between those plates, you've got the clutches, the fibers, they call them, are splined on the inside to a part, and this drum has got little teeth on that. So you got steels that are got teeth on the outside, you got fibers got teeth on the inside. When you pinch these together, all this becomes one. And this clutch, oil pressure goes in there and mashes it. That's why you bolt that plate to the bottom of the transmission with the gasket on it, and it'll tell you this is this particular intermediate clutch. And when you spray put the rubber tip blower up there and you pull the trigger on it, you can hear that clutch in there go thump and apply. And if you hear those clutches apply with air pressure, you'll know that you're okay. But if you hear it go shh, you know that there's air pressure leaking somewhere. You got to find out what crack is.
Some friction discs are steel on both sides and have no friction material.
Okay, there you go. Then that gives you the answer to that question right there. The book is the people that wrote that book wrote that question. They want you to put true down there. All right, a roller clutch. So the clutch is operated by hydraulic pressure. A roller clutch is a two-way clutch. Is it? Is a roller clutch a two-way clutch?
One-way clutch.
That's a one-way clutch. So how does it work?
How does it work?
Ask you first.
How's it
All right. This one here is the stator from the inside of that. And I can turn it one way but not the other way. See that? See how that goes? That's the stator from inside of that torque converter. It'll turn that way, but it won't turn the other way. That's a one-way clutch. And inside of there, typically you're going to have some rollers and some ramps. And when you turn it so the roller goes into the deep part of the ramp, it lets it turn. But when you try to turn it back the other way, those rollers get trapped because it slants down, and that keeps it from turning. Now, they also got other types, too. The other types of one-way clutches, but this is just a roller type. The sprags have got little bow tie-shaped pieces of metal that rock back and forth and all that. So I'm gonna let that back in there so it doesn't get lost. All right. Now then, I ought to have you guys cut another converter apart. Would somebody like to do that?
I wouldn't want to get this man though.
Hey, cool. Just because you can.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Maybe I'll find one that's put together different from that. A worn or warped drum surface can be visually inspected.
True.
Well, that is, at its essence, that question is true, because let's be honest, you can visually inspect anything, but will you always see the problem by visually inspecting it? No, you will not. So that question, if you're going to go by the spirit of the question, is actually false, because you may not be able to, without measuring it, you may not be able to tell if it works, right? The piston return spring must be removed before the piston can be serviced. Now, what is the piston return spring? Remember this thing right here that I drew earlier? There's actually this little boss in the middle, right? It's got a snap ring on it.
Right.
And then you got a piston down in here, and there's a seal around the outside of the piston, a seal right here that goes in here, and there's a seal here, and a seal, you know, this is a circular thing, looks like a donut. All right, in here, there's a snap ring, and it holds a piece of metal, basically, and this is the basic kind, and it's got a whole bunch of springs around here that's supposed to return it. You know, these springs are all the way around this thing. Well, you push this down, and it's real tight. You got a special tool to do that. Take the snap ring off, let this off, then you can get the piston out. Piston's got those lip seals on it. I had one guy in here that called himself trying to rebuild a transmission, and he did not look at any of the rubber parts in that transmission. He didn't think that he needed to. I guess he felt like if you just crammed it all back together, everything would be aight. And he worked and worked and worked. I wasn't holding his hand the whole time. I figured he had enough good sense to know that. And he did a lot of work on that thing, trying to get it to work. But he didn't have any good, he didn't look at the rubber part. Every part of that thing needs to be looked at. You take every clutch, pack apart, you look at all those, rubber seals around there. And the kit that you get's going to have, fibers and steels and rubber parts and gaskets and check balls and all that kind of stuff. Right. Now, I will tell you that most of the people that do transmissions that like those transmissions like the one you're getting ready to build, like I just told you before, that's the one everybody likes to do because they're pretty comfortable. And you've already been through that one over there, so you should be able to. You know what to expect. You know what you're going to see when you get in there. And this one here had never been torn apart. It's not like a trainer transmission. It's got stuff missing out of it. This is one that's operational, right? And that's a good thing, right? So the piston return spring must be removed before the piston can be serviced. There was a guy that I worked with years and years ago, back in the 70s, and he could take a 350 turbo-hydromatic transmission out of a Chevrolet pickup truck or whatever, and he could tear that sucker down and he could rebuild it and have it ready to put back in the car before the torque converter cooled off. That's how fast he was. That's how was swift. And sometimes, if he had somebody that wanted a slightly firmer shift, you'd have a whole bunch of little springs around that little, retainer there. He'd leave half those springs off because it would make the clutch apply a little more firm. See, the springs actually cushion the application a little bit, so he leaves half the springs off, every other one, or maybe some of them, and it would make it apply a little more firmly. That's just one of the things you can do to make that happen. You can also drill some holes out in the separator plate between the valve body and there. There's some little holes if you know where to do. They got little shift kits you put in there. You change accumulator springs and just different things like that, and it makes it shift more, more firmly. And a firm shift is good, really. A lot of people don't like that. No, they don't like to feel the shift. They like for it to, and like I was talking about the other day, the newer transmissions have a. They detorque the engine at about the time the engine shifts so that you don't ever feel it, and that's why the continuous variable transmissions are like a go-kart. They just start they just go right on up faster and faster and faster. You don't feel nothing shift at all. Continuous variable transmission in a hybrid vehicle uses electric motors and planetary gearset. Oh, let's just restart the computer and just mess up our little talk here. All right, so actually the Windows did that for me. Thank you very much. This thing right here, though, there's another thing that I thought was really interesting. Some people used to complain about cruise control causing their transmission to downshift. When you get your cruise control set and you're starting up a hill, sometimes your transmission kicks into the lower gear. Or even if you're going up a mild grade, you'll lose a little bit of speed and your transmission is applying the throttle, and it gets to the point to where it's time for it to shift into the next gear. You go, whoa, you're like, oh man, I was trying to save gas, and now I'm burning more gas because I'm kicked into the lower gear. You know, I usually, but some of these cars that Chrysler used to put out, I mean, that were Mitsubishi class, you know, Chrysler platforms. They had in the, this was back in the late 90s, they had something called fuzzy logic. Yeah, and what that was the computer on the car knew when you had your cruise control engaged. And it also knew that most, you know, it was programmed, said if the throttle angle was changing to try to maintain the speed, and it got to the point to where ordinarily it would make a transmission shift into a lower gear, that fuzzy logic would dictate, look, we got cruise control on, this customer is not going to like it if we shift into a lower gear. I know you want to, but let's don't do that right now. Let's keep it in the same gear so we can keep our customer happy. That's fuzzy. Would you hush? Anyway, that's fuzzy logic. That's what that was. It was like you. Well, not really, because basically, when a customer, the customer is what this is all about. If they set their cruise control and that thing don't shift, they're happy. And I had some people on my cruise control. Somebody came and said they had a late '80s Thunderbird that they drove, and they were not happy with that Thunderbird. It was like, well, '86 Thunderbird, and they bought a '92 model Thunderbird. And they came over here and they said, we don't really like this cruise control. I said, what's wrong with your cruise control? You know, this is when I was working at the Ford place in Dothan. They says, it gains speed going down hills. And our old Thunderbird didn't do that. They had this written on a work order. I'm supposed to fix this where it won't gain speed going down hills. Well, let's let half the air out of the tires. Maybe it won't gain speed going down hills. And you know what I wrote on there? Cruise control does not apply the brake. How can the cruise control keep it from gaining speed going down hills? There's no way it can. Unless you got engine braking, you know, in your transmission or something. But our old Thunderbird not do this, and I don't listen to it either. You know, some of the stuff that they complain about is just nitpicky. This one guy came in there, and he said the windows on both sides of his car didn't go down at the same speed. When he pulled both of the triggers on his windows, he wanted them both to hit the bottom at exactly the same time. And one of them was running a little behind the other one. And he wanted that worked. I mean, the stuff people complain about is just totally amazing to me sometimes, you know. Anyway, that's just funny stuff. And this one guy, you got to watch it, those repair lines. Each repair you do on a work order is a different repair line. Like they'll say, on this repair line, you're going to need to look at a noise the brakes are making. On this repair line, you got an engine oil leak. On this repair line, you got an electrical problem. And so each repair line you address separately. And so the way that we would do it, we'd go in there and it'd say, okay, I need a fuse and I need a, you know, pigtail connector for the brake lights because the stop lights weren't working right. And that's going to go on line 53. And so I'm going to have an O-ring for the distributor. That's going to go on line 51 where the oil leak is. And then the first one where the noisy brakes was, we're going to put some brake pads on it. I'm going to machine the rotors, and the brake pads are going to go on line, 51. So you got to make sure you charge this stuff out on the right line so that these parts were used to fix this problem, that part was used to fix that problem, and so on and so forth. But one day I got a ticket that said, you have to turn on the left turn signal to start the van. And I thought, wow, I've never seen anything like this before. This is incredible. And sure enough, it wouldn't do anything unless I turned on the left turn signal. And so I was just blown away by that. So I worked on that thing for about 30 minutes, and I found out somebody had changed the wiring, so that's the way it worked. So I went out there, and I told the service writer, Curtis was his name. I want to slap a taste out of his mouth. But anyway, I said, Curtis, why did you write this up on a repair line here when that's the way they've changed the wiring? He goes, oh, I just put that on there so you know how to start it. Well, why didn't you put it on a sticky note or something instead of putting it on a repair line like I was supposed to fix it? You know, this is a communication problem. You know, I talked about that in my communications.
So did you have to fix that?
No. He just put it on there so I know how to start it.
What was wrong with it?
They had changed the wiring so it would work that way. They did that so nobody could steal it.
Yeah.
I mean, even if they leave the key in it, somebody don't know you got to turn on the turn signal, they'll try to start it and they can't get it going anywhere. So that's the point. Make sense? Yes. Well, that's just the way it did. Put those tickets on there. All right. So anyway, that's fun stuff and all that. And so, okay, now Tyler is late, so don't let him copy your answers, or he should have already been here. Oh, you can't copy answers anyway because you ain't got none. What are you going to do? Oh, you're putting them on your phone.
Yeah.
How cool. Now well, I tell you what, I will allow you to do this. You can send them to Tyler as a text, and that way you'll be able to get them that way.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. That's funny. All right. Didn't bring a pen, but you brought a cell phone. That's what you were doing with your phone. I couldn't figure out what was going on.
Yeah,
Putting the test answers down on your phone?
Yeah.
Well, you want to send me a text so I'll know you got the test right? Come on.
You want me to?
No.
Oh, really? Okay.
That's nonsense. Good grief. What a generation. Okay, now then, we got the clutch pack cannot be modified. True or false?
False.
That is false. You can do
You
can do anything you want to with the clutch pack, right? And you know, I will tell you this: like you may have transmissions that on the outside look just alike, but this transmission was made to be in a different vehicle than that one. And like the old like you had an automatic transmission that was in a Vega, it would have a different number of clutches in the packs than the one that was in a pickup truck because they use different torque rating. No, that ages ago. Whereas piston return spring must be removed before the piston can be serviced, and that is the way that is. That is true. That is correct. Yeah. Some clutches use single-sided friction discs. That is true. The clutch is housed in the transmission or transaxle case. What? The clutch. The clutch is handled. Actually, it is. Where else would it be?
Oh, no, I thought it was in the drum.
The drum is in the case, though. I mean, that's what they're wanting in there. Is that what it said in there? What do you see in your book? The clutch. What you're thinking about? You're thinking about the actual clutch plate disc. They're actually talking about the whole assembly. You see what I'm saying? That's basically that's their plate clearance or piston travel measurements must be made after installing a clutch assembly. Actually, before installing the clutch assembly, that's actually false. But I will tell you this: every book, everything that you see shows you using a feeler gauge. After you've stacked all those clutches and steels in there and put your snap ring in place, they show you taking a feeler gauge and measuring it, and it's got to be just so-so. Well, the guys at the transmission shop over here that build transmissions all day, every day, and make lots of money doing it, they don't measure doodly squat. They just pop that sucker together, and they know when it looks about right. It ain't all that critical. You know, obviously, if that thing rattling around loose, you can tell it. You know, so I mean, this is with all due respect. Now, a lot of the time when you're stacking these automatic transmissions together, or when you pull them apart, every bushing, every bearing, every part, you better look at it really, really, really close. I mean it. I mean, look at it. Don't miss nothing. And now, if you've got worn out bushings or wiped out parts, you may have to have some hard parts. A lot of the times, you can't get the bushings to go in these these drums and stuff that'll have a bushing in there. And every part that you put in there has got to have a washer, a thrust washer or a bearing or something in between them. I've talked about that before. You know, you can't just stack all that stuff together with two metal parts grinding against each other. You see, yeah, so you don't go there. Make darn sure. You know, this is not just, we're not just talking about cramming this thing together so that we can get the pump beat in there with a hammer and, you know, dump all the parts in there and hope it'll be all right, you know. I bought a used transmission one time from some local yokel over here, you know, and when he sent this thing over here, I took it apart and it was just a disaster area, you know. And he was wanting a lot of money for it too, and I sent it back to him because that was when I first came here, you know, and we were, you know, I was getting some stuff together. But the money that he was wanting for that transmission was like $350 or something. It was a boat weight. It was absolutely worthless. And I couldn't believe it. And he acted like it came out of a car that was running, so go figure, you know. It's like a pig in a poke if you don't take it apart and see what you're getting. The plate clearance or piston travel must be made before installing the clutch assembly is basically what you're wanting on that one there. Let's look at this one here, which is not an apply component used in a typical automatic transmission or transaxle. What about the two-way clutch? What about one-way clutch? Multiple disc clutches, clutch bands.
Two-way clutch?
The Sam Hill is a two-way clutch. Give me a break. Yeah, you're right. That's the one that's not an apply component. Okay, 12. The blank seal is commonly used to seal the piston to the drum bore. The blank seal. Lateral, D-ring, E-ring, or lap. D-ring seal is the answer they're wanting there. The D-ring seal. That's C. Which of the following is not a type of clutch band? List 13. Double wrap, triple wrap, single wrap, single wrap. In other words, double wrap and then triple wrap heavy duty, single wrap heavy duty, single wrap light duty.
Triple wrap. According to the book, anyway.
Triple wrap heavy duty is not a type of clutch band. And which of the following is not a servo linkage design? That's number 14. Curved link, cantilever, lever, straight link. What does cantilever mean? What is a cantilever?
I don't know if I was asking. I never heard of it.
Cantilever. Anybody know what a cantilever is? Got any idea? Actually, curved link is not a servo linkage design. What's servo linkage mean? What are you talking about? What does a servo do, guys? What does a servo do? Tell me what a servo does. I think I got a picture of one there somewhere. Of course, you may look at an accumulator from here. What does a servo do? You guys know what the servo looks like when you pull the valve body off. A lot of times you'll see a servo. Sometimes you'll see a servo out there on the outside of the case. And it's a piston. And it's got a little rod that goes against something. And what does it basically do? If you got a servo, it applies a band, y'all. It pinches.
Ah, I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about when I talk about a servo. Get your head wrapped around these terms. That's what you got to do. Cantilever is this right here. If you got something that's it's cantilever, it's basically made so that you've got pressure here, and this can't move but just so far. See what I'm saying? You can actually talk about that in building construction. You know, you got a cantilever like a porch or something like that you got weight here, but it can't go up, and it just makes, you know, that kind of stuff. If anybody finds out anything different, you might want to look that up if you got any doubts about that. So a clutch steel plate that has slots cut into the surface is called what? Is it called a slip plate, a turbulator plate, an index plate, or a single line plate?
Sounds like a slip like that, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's, I see your semantics there, slots cut into the surface. That's actually a turbulator plate. We call it a turbulator plate.
You do?
Well, it's basically bites better than one that doesn't have slut. You know what I'm saying? Like you see a clutch over here, it's got, you know, in other words, it's got lines down there, and it's like, well, that's like tire tread, you know, to make it grab better. You got, you know, a bunch of little surfaces that are in line with each other. Okay. All right, I guess that's pretty well got that there. I didn't put any matching questions on there because I don't really like those that much. Anybody got any questions or comments about that? You understand stuff now? You're going to understand a lot better when you get that transmission going in that truck, ain't you?